If you want to learn new skills, whether that's AI now, agents, automations, or no code to build your own products, it can be everything. You just have to go for it. That's what got me over the line finally to learn it. And once I really practiced it, it was so much better. We practice with something really simple, something that you definitely are not going to use for your end product, but you just have to get over the line.
Always like, oh my God, like I can't build this, or I can't go about and do a first version of this.
And they are all creative, and suddenly you can build by yourself. So you see the joy in the eyes of the people. It's like a kid in a candy store.
Is it like completely prompts, or how do you basically get them started on this?
We advocate to start small. You can always add more features later, but start small, and then from there iterate. Because when it codes something for you, you always get, in these tools, you get options because you will encounter errors. It's not going to be flawless. It's AI, it's non-deterministic, so it can go all kind of ways. It suddenly can add features you didn't request yet, interpret something differently. And that's another lesson, like the more often it saws something, the better it knows what you want.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Founders Foyer with me, Aishwarya. This foyer is full of conversations. The space where creators, founders, and builders look for all the support and concepts to grow their ideas into products. Product building has been democratized by AI. From PMs, developers, designers, to even exec leaders, everybody's been high on how to ride this AI wave and ensure that they're up to date for what it takes to grow in this new economy. The latest in that journey is AI coding agents, and they've been super remarkable in helping people go from ideas to literally working prototypes in hours and days. This is fascinating, and as someone who's been living this builder life, I want to kickstart conversations around how one can leverage this for their work. I've got Harold here, and it's going to be super exciting because we're going to discuss all of what is keeping us so much occupied in the last few weeks. Harold Dijkstra is currently building the 100 School, making tech and AI skills accessible for anyone with ideas. With helping more than 41,000 builders across the globe, their online approach has been super helpful for creators and builders to ship prompts to products. Harold, I'm so happy you're here on the podcast, and welcome.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having us. Excited to talk about this. And like you said, it's so exciting times for us non-techies that we can build our own things now. So yeah, I'm really happy to chat with you about this. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's begin. And I think the best way that we start this conversation is about what got you into, as the non-tech builder that you said, what got you into this AI space in the first place, right? And we have to look at the fact that no code a few years ago was considered very promising and very empowering for anyone who had ideas and who'd want to visualize that. So as someone who was playing around with no code to now the AI shift, where's the place that we are in right now? What got you into this, and how can builders optimize for the journey with AI now?
Yeah. Well, where it started, that's a nice one. Actually, so I'm part of the 100 School. Max Heining, who founded the 100 School in 2020, when we were all in lockdown in COVID period, he started tinkering with no code because, yeah, he previously was at a startup where that startup failed, and he felt like bad that he couldn't do anything on the technical side. That's what he wanted to learn during COVID, and that's how he started the hashtag 100 Days of No Code. And that's how I discovered Max as well. And I wanted to learn about no code too. And the whole reason I wanted to learn this, I'm a founder, I'm an entrepreneur here in the Netherlands. I work together with a technical co-founder here, and I always had to ask him, can we do this? Can we do that? And especially in COVID, we lost a lot of business. So we suddenly had to be creative to find new revenue models because otherwise we couldn't make it. However, I always had to ask him, and he's great and all, but I always had to ask him, can we do this? And he only could do so much at the same time. So yeah, well, there was some tension, to be honest. I had the ideas, and can we do this to generate revenue? Can we do that? And he only could build that much at the same time. So I really wanted to become more autonomous, more freedom in my work, actually, to be able to build my own things. And that's where I found Max, followed Max, and And I loved it. I really loved it. I could be with no code. I was able to build my own things suddenly. Of course, I had to learn it first. I had to practice, but that was no code. And it felt so empowering. So yeah, when I learned it, I immediately said to Max, "Hey, this is awesome. I want to share this with other non-technical people too. Can I join the team?" And that's when we teamed up. And later I co-founded the bootcamps, which we are going to talk later about as well, with Max, and we are doing this together for many years already now. So yeah, that's how I got into no code, to basically break free from having to ask others. And then yeah, then AI came up later as well, right? So the premise of no code was already good, empowering, but it even got better with AI in the mix as well. And now you not only have to drag and drop things together, as in no code, where you basically visually develop things, but now you can also add conversational building to the mix, so just prompting. And also now, even with the AI code editors, you can easily generate custom code and even customize your builds even more. So yeah, that's yeah, even better for non-technical people like us. We can build everything we want, basically. So yeah, that's the journey, how it all started.
Thank you for sharing your journey. Each part of your journey fed into the other, like how you met Max, how you started off learning no code tools. And I can totally relate to the fact that you've got like so many ideas, but then you're always like, oh my God, like I can't build this, or I can't go about and do a first version of this. So, as someone who did that no code journey myself, I can totally relate to the frustration that comes with, let's just go get this done. And yeah, like from what you explain about AI, and yes, we're going to be discussing more about that. I, the similarities that I see from what you're talking about, no code and AI, is the empowering part still remains the same, but in the sense that AI is like a 10x version of what no code was letting us do. In the sense, at least like it's not too manual, but then a lot of it is like being agentic and giving us more scope than what it had.
Yeah.
Harold, just to add to that, right? I think for someone to upskill and go like how you did from no code to AI, how to deal with that, and how do you pick up and learn some of these new skills?
Yeah, well, the way to learn it, the way to learn it is actually to practice and to build things. Before, so I already followed Max for a while before I got into it at all. So I was basically a lurker, and many people listening
Mm.
to this will relate to that probably. You follow the tech news, you follow people on X or wherever you are, and got inspired by that. So basically, you, based on following that, you somehow already knew what to build. However,
Mm.
that's really something different than actually building something. So the way to learn things is to get into this, to get the reps in. And a lot of people get stuck at keep comparing tools. So they see the tools in tech news, they see the
Oh
tools
yeah.
in X, and they keep circling around, right? For this tool is great, but the pricing, how's the pricing of that other tool? And they keep going in circles without diving into a tool. We call this analysis paralysis, where you just get stuck, paralyzed by analysis. So the way to do this is to start, to build, to get into it, practice with bite-sized lessons we share, and build things following our guides, and then eventually start to build your own projects. So that's the one thing we start with, is tackling analysis paralysis. So if you want to learn new skills, whether that's AI now, agents,
Mm.
automations, or no code, build your own products, it can be everything. You just have to go for it and practice, get the reps in. That's what got me over the line finally, to learn it. And once I really practiced it, it was
Mm.
so much better, and I understood everything way better than just following everyone on Twitter, as it was called then. So yeah, yeah, that's just get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, because you're just basically saying what a lot of us are known to do, right? And it's not like we don't want to get started, but like you just mentioned, there's always this fear, or there's always this doubt about, okay, like can I go try this? There are tens of tools. How do I get started? But it's one thing to, and at least I can totally relate to that. It's one thing to follow and save some of these tweets as bookmarks, and totally another thing to go and play with the tool and actually learn from that experience. So yeah, I'm actually glad that you mentioned that. And for folks who are listening and who are just on the bench and who are looking to start, I think the best way, like you mentioned, is to go about, try, fail. And perhaps one thing I'll add to this is also doing that is going to give us more room to post what we learned, and that helps us meet a lot of people. In the last few weeks, what's been super interesting for me is just tweeting out some of the problems that I face with AI tools. And there are like a bunch of them who come in to say, oh, like I've tried this. Did you go and try? Did you go check this out? And there's like this small hyper specific community that gets built around problems. So it's nice to get help from others and see how you can like co-build stuff together.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, the no code and AI space, it's so like supportive. So if you're struggling with something, there's always someone to jump into it. And yeah, so we recommend to share in public where possible,
Mm.
or find your tribe. And it could be the community in a course like ours, but it can also be colleagues, or just find some people that you are comfortable with sharing, embracing like failing as well, because of course you are learning something new. So that won't go immediately perfect, right? So we
Yeah.
always progress is more important than perfect. To learn something, just get the reps in, share it with someone, even if it's not perfect yet. Send it
Yeah.
along to few people, and learn from their feedback. And maybe they are tinkering with the same tools and they have some tips for you. Just start
Mm.
the conversation, and the best way to do this is start sharing your work, and then you
Yeah.
can learn together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely with you there. And for someone who's starting their AI work and trying to see, okay, which direction to go into, the reason I'm saying this is because with AI, there are like different ways you can explore. Some of them use it for brainstorming sessions, they use AI tools to come up with new ideas. Some of them set up like a productivity system where they use a bunch of these tools to set up workflows that can help them do their work much faster. There's also like other ways where you just have some existing ideas, use AI tools to spin off. There are multiple directions to go into. So for someone who's starting, is there like a certain way or a certain style that you generally recommend? Because you've been seeing like a lot of them who barely know how to use to actually getting to know how to use. So are there like patterns that you're seeing in people, or is there like a way you would suggest them to approach and navigate this?
Yeah. Yeah. So how we approach it. So I'm running the boot camps for the 100 School, and we are hosting them on Maven. So that's the no code and AI boot camp, and our coding with AI boot camp. And over time, we did 16 cohorts now. Over time, we learned that the most important thing is to get people started. So we practice with something really simple, something that you
Mm,
definitely are not going to use for your end product, but you just have to get over the line, ship your first thing, and get into
right.
the like in the habit of shipping, into the habit of building something, and get
Mm,
the creative juices flowing. So we start really small, and
mm,
then there's always people coming in with big ideas, but let's keep it small. Let not overcomplicate this. So just let's prevent we get stuck in that analysis paralysis again, and just
yeah.
good first touch the foundation. So when you build something, what's important to learn is what's the user seeing? So the UI, the user interface. Where do you store the data? So the data is one of the components. And is there any logic in between? So those are the three core concepts that we are touching during the first 1.5 weeks of our program. So we do a tour basically around those concepts, learning tools where you can use to build those concepts.
Mm,
And we selected versatile tools for it you can use for many use cases. So the students don't have to compare tools. They don't have to think which
right.
tool am I going to use. Just follow us. Just follow us. We
Mm,
know it's a lot. It's action oriented. But after these 1.5 week, you have the foundations. You know actually how to connect all these things, and you can build your own product. So touching the foundations is really important. Once you
mm,
understand what's involved in a no-code and AI product or an AI project, it's easier. It will start to click, and it's easier to build your own products. So that's how we
yeah.
approach it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And yeah, I think it's probably better to start off with understanding the core fundamentals before going on to branching out. Because the reason that I was particularly going with that question was often when there's chat with builders, right? There's it's never about how do I learn the basics of this, but it's always about jumping to the big idea. It's like, hey, I want to do that automation workflow. I want to set up an AI agent. I want to do this. I want to do that. But it's never from the core aspect of okay, like, but what's the most fundamental thing I have to understand before I get to do that. So from what you say, it makes a lot of sense to come back and actually like do one core simplest thing well, understand that, and then go about to see how you can scale this up to a larger extent, or keep building over and over on top of that. But yeah, like start small.
Yeah, yeah, definitely start small. Like, and one thing, like if you are a founder or a creator and you are on following on socials, whether X or Instagram or LinkedIn, wherever, you see posts from other people like about automations. They have these wild long automations
Yeah.
running like Christmas trees and all kind of pots. And but actually, if you want to learn it, it's totally not a good idea. Definitely not a good idea. Keep it small
Mm.
because when you keep it small in several steps, it's easier to manage them, to keep them up to date. Instead of creating those whole long lines of automations, if one thing breaks in those lines, everything can go wrong there. So it's not, you don't need to copy those creators, but
Mm.
instead learn how to keep it small. So start small. If you are a
Yeah.
big founder and would love to make your work lighter or run things on pilot, yeah, just automate tiny things. That's already a big
Yeah.
win. Then from there you learn. The more you practice, the more you build, the easier it gets. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we get
Yeah.
like the socials. Yeah, with like with everything, of course. But socials can make us feel like, oh, we never can do
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah,
No, that's true. And with AI, right, there's always this FOMO factor that comes with, oh my God, I have to learn this new tool and I have to get going. And I mean, like in general, concept in itself, we don't start small, but in AI, I think it forces us to start small. But even then, we try to go about to say, how do I build the most grandest thing with it? But
yeah.
yeah, I guess the truth is definitely in doing small things well and then stitching them together to actually build a better experience. So yeah, completely with you there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, like if you ask the like AI code editors, AI can generate complete code for you, code complete products for you. But if you prompt it like, hey, it should, I want to build this and it should have all these 100 features, AI will get lost quickly. So
Oh,
even
absolutely.
there's also like the advice, start small. What's the one thing you need to
Yeah.
do first? And if you have that one thing and you are able to share this with your clients or prospects or your team, if you're building something internally, you can learn from their feedback too. So it's just
True.
always recommended to keep it small, start small. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, with AI, I think it teaches you a lot of systemization. Like, how do you build like one block over another and not go about rushing, and like you said, give the whole prompt, build this app, and yeah, it's just going to get lost and it's going to hallucinate. So yeah, like definitely like building one block over the other is a better route. And on that context, Harold, I would love to dig a slightly deeper into the boot camp process, right? Because what makes me curious is when we talk about ideas to products with I want to understand how far to a length that AI goes here. What does an end app look like? And for someone who's just building with you from an idea to actually shipping that through as a working prototype, what's that creation flow like? Could you walk us through that?
Yeah. So yeah, our program takes 2.5 weeks. First, we touch the basics. And like I mentioned, we talk about UI, whether that's an AI agent or an assistant or just a full-fledged web app or a mobile app. And we
Hmm.
practice the user interface. But if you build a user interface, you probably also have data from your users or data you want to show in your app. So you need to store this data as well. So
So
we
the
talk
user
about
interface is also built with AI, right? That's
can
also
be, can
like
be, yeah. So in our coding with AI Bootcamp, we are using tools like Replit Agent, Cursor,
hmm,
Lovable, Bolt, where AI codes your solutions. And
right.
then in our no-code AI Bootcamp, that's the regular bootcamp, where we use other tools like Zapier and Softer, Airtable, for example, Flutterflow, and those are
Hmm.
really drag and drop with AI features as well. And so that's a different stack of tools, but you can achieve the same things. So user interface, data, where do you store the data, and logic, how you combine it. So if a user clicks the button and you want something to happen, you need to add logic there as well. And then
Mm.
after that 1.5 week, it's up to the students to build something on their own, whether that's something for a new startup, whether that's something for internally, whether that's something for fun, or whether that's this a side project or to
Mm.
tinker with. We strongly believe that you learn the most from actually building something by yourself. So we really encourage everyone to build something there because that's where you suddenly encounter errors maybe that were not
Yeah.
in the guides and how to deal with it because that's the whole thing. It's more about the process. How do you deal with, how can you collaborate with AI or how can
Yeah.
you then about the real outcome at this point? And then you can build wild things. So we saw students who built customer research tools. We saw
Hmm.
students launching complete apps, chatbots, web apps, mobile apps that got featured and launched later for consumers, for the B2B market internally. So there was one project at Microsoft from a participant from Microsoft, which
Oh,
eventually graduated and is now an internal tool there. We saw people selling their products 3 months later already, which is also wild to see. It can be diverse. Yeah.
yeah.
Lots of founders in there, lots of creators, lots of product managers as well. And they are all creative, and suddenly you can build by yourself. So you see the joy in the eyes of the people. It's like a kid in a candy store who suddenly
Yeah.
can build it, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
And
No,
it can
for
lead you
sure.
where you want. So yeah, you were wondering what can you build. It's basically what you envision, and it can happen because when you build something and you can connect it via Zapier, for example, with the
Mm.
tools you already use, you can enhance or extend your current workflows. So you can build a product. For example, if you're using a CRM and it lacks some features that you really would like to have, then you can look at other CRMs or things, but you can also just build the features in a tiny little tool
Yeah.
on yourself and just connect that with your existing CRM. And that's totally possible now. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
just a few examples of what's possible. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And I like all of the ideas because it just basically proves the fact that what people call as the personal itch, like what's something that's bothering you as a problem and just go build it out. I think with AI tools, it's been really possible to build all of our personal problem statements into an actual working app, like how you can suddenly turn a personal app into an app that you can use every day. You just don't have to go like keep purchasing other apps, but you can say, oh, like I need a book reader, let me just build it myself. I need a note taker, let me just build it myself. So I think it's definitely empowering in that sense. And a lot of these examples are also very interesting because it's like giving people more space and room to not just plug in new ideas, but like you said, use something as an internal tool, use something that can be shipped along with your work. And on that context, Harold, I'm quite curious to know what's the process like for them to, let's say, first generate a prototype of, okay, this is how a user experience or this is how the UI looks like, and then use that as a means for the next, let's say, the agent platform. So is it like completely prompts, or how do you basically get them started on this? Do they use prompts to get the UI part? Do they use then the UI with the agentic platform? Can you clarify that part, because I think for a lot of builders this is going to be amazing for them to try it out.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the coding with AI bootcamp, where with Replit Agent and Lovable, Bolt, etc., it's yeah, you just start with the prompt. Of course, it's good to keep it small because
Mm.
just throw a lot of wishes features at all, it gets more complicated. So think about what you want to build. We recommend to think about this before, so either with ChatGPT, Claude, something to like
Mm.
think about what you want to build. With Cloud Artifacts, for example, you can already prototype a little bit, like, hey, this is what I want to look. Screenshots you could use later in other tools as well, like, hey, this is how I want to make it look like.
Mm.
And then you start to build. It helps to give it some context, like what you want to achieve. And then we advocate to start small. You can always
Mm.
add more features later, but start small. And then from there, iterate. Because when it codes something for you, you always get, like, in these tools, you get options. Do you accept these? And then when you accept it, you can test it, or you can reject the updates. You can roll back to previous version if it's not like what you want. And while doing so, you probably will encounter errors. So it
Yeah.
created a little tool with a button, but the button doesn't do anything. And then you
Mm.
feed that back into the AI, like, hey, looks great, but it doesn't work properly. Can you fix this? Or maybe you get some errors. Maybe you see some errors in the console. You can say, hey, I don't know what these errors mean, but here's a screenshot of the errors. Can you fix this for me? And then it is going to look at the screenshot and fixes it for you. So you go back and forth, and from there you can
Mm.
build it out. So that's the starting. Of course, when you are satisfied at a certain point, save it and then add next features. But learning how to deal with those errors is definitely an important way, because you will
Mm.
encounter errors. It's not going
Right.
to be flawless. It's AI, it's non-deterministic, so it can go all kind of ways. It suddenly can add features you didn't request yet, or interpret something differently. And that's another lesson. Like, the more often it saw something, the better it
Mm.
knows what you want. So in our course, we also talk about using existing frameworks
Right.
for components to use in your apps, for example, where you can
Mm.
refer, because the AI then just knows better what you're asking for. So the outcome will be more like you really wanted it. So that's another thing we are looking into. And then, yeah,
Interesting.
iterate. Yeah, bring it
Yeah.
back. A lot of screenshots. You just send back there, and then build it out. And to make it like more robust,
Mm.
we are also looking at integrations for authentication, for example, or for databases.
Yeah.
So tool like Supabase is
Mm.
great. It's a reliable tool for authentication databases. So we look into how to connect the product you built with AI to that, so they can take care of the authentication, they can take care of the
Mm.
database. Because so far we saw that's not always, when you try to do this in the code editor, it's not always going really well and reliable with authentication. So for now, we always recommend to just connect it to Supabase, so you have a
Yeah.
reliable uh, platform, and also more scalable when you really want to grow your product.
Yeah.
So that's something. And what's really interesting is that you can also connect it with APIs, or via a
Yeah.
web. For example, you can send it to Zapier. So when something happens in the app you built, your user did something or completed a form, and you want to store
Mm.
their information in your CRM. If we go back to that one, you can trigger a webhook and then set up a SAP in
Right.
Zapier, all kind of flows, just to make it work together with the tools you already use in your day to day. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting. And I think what used to take a lot of days and weeks for us to figure out is now definitely like one step further for us to explore, and been very, very easy for us to access. And as you were just saying, I was recollecting how a lot of my journey in learning to code with AI has also been very similar, feeding a lot of screenshots and trying to, ask it step by step. And one thing I completely agree with you is how from these errors is how you will be able to learn, trying to say, oh, like I face this error, what's the issue here? And then it tries to talk to you about, okay, this is the issue and this is how I've done the code. And then you go about having, it's like how you're talking to a kid version of you, trying to say, no, 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 no. Like, let's go back to this version. Let's walk me through what did you do in each step so that I can review. So it's just been like, I think tremendously like having a conversation with a kid version of you. That's like the version that you have with the AI. So I can totally relate to putting in screenshots, trying to be as specific. And one great point that you mentioned is also trying to use a bunch of these tools together, right? Like trying to always start your workflow with a ChatGPT or a Claude, and then generating a certain artifact out of it, and then trying to get into the agentic systems, because I think that definitely like gets the process slightly more streamlined than just going about to these editors and just putting in the prompts directly. Because I have seen in some cases, like you were saying, there's hallucination, or there's suddenly like things you didn't want in the app, and then suddenly the app adds it to the code. So like, yeah, I think getting very specific and small and using this workflow is a very good technique to go about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it's more about the process. When learning this, more about the
Mm.
process than the tools or the outcome. So when you want to learn this, at the bare minimum, you get a better understanding what's going on in the product, so you can talk with
Yeah.
your developers, or you understand what they
Mm.
are doing, or when you brief
Mm.
someone, you better understand what it's about. So that's the bare minimum. Um,
Yeah.
you learn from the AI. And when building a couple of things, you better understand the process because yeah, you
Hmm.
will it might get in a loop. What are you doing then? Are you roll back or is there a point even that you say just I need to start over? That's
Hmm.
possible because yeah, you can waste a lot of time if you it's stuck in a loop and you try to solve it
Yeah.
in the process, you can also just know, all right, this can happen. I'm going to start a new project and might not happen again. Or I know what to do with the tools. So yeah, it takes effort,
Hmm.
it takes practice, but you will benefit from it if you learn this now. And from every build, you get better with it. So if I compare what I was able to build when I just started after I joined Max and what I can do now, yeah, I practiced a lot. So yeah, it all starts to click more and you see
Yeah.
patterns. Yeah, oh, that was the mistake I made the previous time. Not gonna do this again. Or maybe sometimes I make a second mistake, of course, but you will learn from it, right? So
Yeah.
you get better every time. And that's, I think, the joy for non-technical people. Like, yeah, we can do this. I can build
Yeah.
automations or I can run things without asking someone else and waiting for days for their reply and then have to go back to them. It's just like I get my replies from AI instantly, and I can, if it has to happen today, it's gonna be happening today because I know how to work with AI and with the tools. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's super empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. It's definitely empowering. And it's also like trying to go at it one step at a time because the error loop is something that was it's unavoidable. But I guess it's also like one way to constantly keep at it. And one good lesson that I took from what you said, and I can relate to what I'm going through too, is being very comfortable with scrapping something out and then starting once again, or trying to be willing to try multiple versions for the same problem, because it's not like you're going to get it the great way the first time. So you have to be very, very okay with wanting to play around. And if one version's not working out, go to another tool or try to prompt it in a different way and see what went wrong with the previous version. So that's also, I think, been super helpful in building your own theory. And from what it sounds like for me, when you explained about the work process in itself, I feel like everybody would end up with a very different and a unique AI workflow for themselves. Like, going down the line, I mean, feel free to add your thoughts to it, Harold. But I also think that, yeah, down the line, it's going to be like what's going to work for Harold is going to look very similar to Aishwarya, but then each of them would have their own workings and the ways that they've learned the stuff that works for them. So is this how you're thinking through? Or
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's one golden way to do it every time, right? So it's
yeah,
definitely what works for you, and you see this on socials as well. Like the age of personal software is coming. More people start building because it's possible,
yeah,
and everyone finds their way, right? So you figure out what works for you, and some people want to really think it through or want to understand what's happening, whereas other people are just accepting all the updates and just testing it in testing the output, bringing back a screenshot and it works and accept. Whereas others really want to follow the instructions, see what it's doing. And yeah, like one of our students said yesterday, like, oh, learned so much about coding by just reading along every update from them, from the
mm,
AI. So yeah, that's also a way to go through it. So yeah, it really depends how you want to use it. So there's not a one perfect way, but the way to learn it is to just practice with it. That's the golden
yeah,
the rule of thumb. So if you want to learn this, you have to get the reps in. So that's one thing, yeah. And you will learn along the way. So you will learn from every update you make, from everything. You will learn, this works great for me, and
mm,
maybe yeah, that's a different workflow for you than for me.
yeah,
um, yeah, you craft your own processes, right? So yeah, that's great, yeah.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you can also connect it with, for example, with GitHub, and then from GitHub other developers can get into your projects later on as well and make it more
mm,
scalable. So you can make a prototype yourself and then hand it over to others. uh,
yeah.
that's possible. So yeah, you can build the workflows out with other people too, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely that way. I think it's definitely beneficial because one angle we're talking about is how we're able to build some of these small toy like apps, like where we have the simplest ideas, we're able to go build this up. I think the other part of AI code, which you just last mentioned, is how much empowering it is to get this up let's say if you're working with a bunch of designers, a bunch of developers on your larger team, the fact that now you can actually take a working prototype to them and sit and share your ideas, not just in words, but as a builder, as someone who's sharing this idea, you can take a working version with you, and you can basically like push that code and then have them build on top of it, or co-create and do something together. I think that's also a very interesting part of team dynamics that AI has changed, because earlier it used to be a lot of, oh, like I'm done with this, let me go hand this off to this person, they're going to take care of entirely of this, and all the frustration comes because you're like, oh, this is my idea, I'm not able to go do this. But now I feel like the it's just completely changed the way people collaborate and sync up on an idea, because I can clearly see when I have an idea, I'm no longer sitting to actually go share it in words with my designer or my developer, but then I go about building a very very micro version of what that app would look, and go about specifying the language in which I want the AI code to build it. And then using that, I take it to my dev friends, sit down with them and say, hey, like now if you want to build on top of this, okay, let's talk in terms that we can build on top of this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great example. So at the beginning, I mentioned how I got into no code, and
Exactly.
that was during COVID when I, with my technical co-founder here, I was just throwing ideas at him like, can we build this? Because we needed revenue, like revenue dropped, and he got a little bit he got into building things, right? So it was not reluctant or something, but he
Hmm.
couldn't build everything. And at a certain point, there was like some kind of tension. Like I,
Yeah.
as the ID person, throw everything at him. Can you build this? And yet another project, because we have to find something. And then he got annoyed by just me throwing more project at him while
Yeah.
he was in project. And I sent him long emails like, I think this is the idea. And then, yeah, well, there was tension, really was tension.
Hmm.
Banging my head to the wall, like, we don't have revenue. I need to find something. And then I learned about no code. And then I stumbled on one more idea. And instead of sending him more long emails, because I just knew he was frustrated at getting all those ideas thrown at him, I built a prototype, and that was actually saved our 2020 year, because he was using it. It worked perfectly already as a
Hmm.
prototype, and suddenly he said, "Oh wow, this is it. Let's stop all the other projects. Let's focus on this one for this year."
Yeah.
And the tension was gone, and so that's a really, for me personally, a big win and a great example of what is possible. And like you just described it, you build the thing first before you talk with others, and it's not going to take months. You just maybe
Yeah.
in an afternoon, and the next meeting you share like, hey, I think we should do this, and you show it, and people immediately can interact with it. And yeah, that's yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
definitely.
it is a great asset, I feel, and can I think the both of us totally relate to it, and a lot of them who are listening as well would be able to relate to it. And perhaps you're just searching for the way to get started, and I think our conversation is really going to help them. I like how you had mentioned a lot of these tools for them to go try out. So it's like super actionable and super specific to get started with the journey instead of like sitting about and thinking through. And I'm actually like, also it's a fun thought, but then do you see AI becoming like a tutor in itself in the next coming years? I mean, like now here we are trying to learn all of these things and share it with people. But do you think like AI could also, at least AI agents that are being used in these tools today, can they become tutors themselves, which they're already partly doing now? But what's your take on that? Like, how do you see AI tutoring to actually like let you build apps in the next, couple of years down the line?
Yeah, yeah, interesting question. How the relationship will evolve. Yeah, definitely. I think like I see it now, we are basically coaching the tools like, hey, this is what we need, and
Mm.
yeah, you are on something, but you need to do it slightly more this or slightly more. So we are basically coaching them at
Yes.
this point. But it's also like already doing some like, hey, Replit, for example, here's the output.
Mm.
You can test it. Here's are some instructions to test it. Let me know if it works properly, and then I go on. So it's already giving some advice there. And I think at a
Mm.
certain point, it definitely will coach us as well. Like, hey, I'm building this for you, but have you thought about doing it this way? Or have you thought about maybe even marketing advice already? So I definitely see it become a mutual coaching relationship there later. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this. And yeah, tutoring as well. Like you learn from their instructions, and maybe
Yeah.
if you ask it like, hey, while we're building this, turn this into a course for me. It probably can make it that way as well.
It's wild to think about it, but I'm very excited because you're right. In some sense, I think we are definitely coaching and we are training the agents right now today to get to a certain extent that we want. But I think it's going to be a fine balance between us and also like the AI agent, and it's going to be wild. But yeah, it's definitely up and coming. I too feel the same way.
Yeah, and what I like about it, like it's great to work with it because it never says
Mm.
no, right? It's just on the constructive way, like, yeah, let's do it. Let me try, and it's so polite. So it's great collaboration already, and it will. I think I really think it will only become more fun. The output
Yeah.
will be better. The tools we are looking now at are the worst tools we're ever going to work with because they only will get better from here.
Mm.
So that's the expectation there. As AI evolves, it will get easier and easier. So yeah, learning the process now will set you up for the right track to just embrace, yeah, the creative opportunity there. And that's how I envision it. So that's why I'm so happy about this. I have learned these skills. It's the joy. Well, I'm using a lot of Zapier, for example, on a day-to-day basis to
Mm.
automate flows and things. And every time I just feel so great to work with it because it just feels empowering. And I see this joy in our students' eyes as well when we are talking about the projects.
Yeah.
It's just fun. We open up doors for people who previously depended on others. Yeah, that's yeah,
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and the fact that we're doing all of this while AI in itself is getting better, I think that's the most challenging as well as the most satisfying part, I think, because it's not like everything is up there and now we are trying to catch up and say, oh, like things are out there, let us go and do like a one jump into understanding everything. But I think as we are taking one step further, AI is taking another three steps. So it's also like the way that we are learning things at also a rapid scale in which it's changing. So I think it's the most challenging that one could ever do at this phase. It's like how, a couple of years ago, no code, and 2020 we had this no code revolution. We had creator economy coming through. I feel like with AI, it's just a new name to it. It's just a completely new economy that we're in, because whatever traditional skills stood for, whatever people were used to like doing, I think all of that is getting very, I wouldn't call it replaced, but it's getting completely revised and revamped. So it's also like fun in one thing, but it's also, I think, challenging. And on that context, Harold, I would love to know your thoughts on what are the challenges that you foresee with, we've been talking a lot with how AI has been helpful, how it's been super empowering, and it's very creative and fun. But also on the other side, for us, you work with a lot of tool partners, you work with a lot of these builders. So what is one, or rather like a couple of things you see that still needs to be bridged between these tools, AI capabilities, and builders? And how do you see these challenges? Probably do you see them getting better with time, or what's your take on challenges today versus how things are evolving in the next coming years?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, great question. Yeah, so basically my advice for them, yeah, yeah, I think what's really clear with the agents and automations and things is that the tools need to fit into broader workflows, right? So,
Yes.
and I think most tools are working on this already, if they haven't already, to make their tools like really great to integrate with your existing tools, to automate things, to get data from other tools, to build your apps on top of it. So in the no code space, for example, software is one of the easy tools to get into building, which we shared a lot with our students. And they were really working hard on becoming data agnostic. So you can build apps, applications with software on top of your data. For example, if your
Mm.
data is on Airtable, you can build a custom port for clients or for your team on top of that. But yeah, Airtable is not only data source. Other people have it is in Google Sheets or maybe in Monday.com or HubSpot or whatever. Yeah, Pipedrive or you mentioned it. So they worked on making it possible to connect your own application basically on all those tools, which is awesome. And I think that's an example, and I hope all these tools are working on so you can
Yeah.
connect their specific features to other tools you are already using to supercharge your workflows basically. So that's one thing. So that's why I encourage all the founders to double down on that, so we can trigger workflows from it, etc. And the other thing, that's always what we hear a lot as well. Don't forget the creators, the founders, because they're all chasing enterprise and price plans are getting higher and higher. But we are in the age of personal development. So more and more people are now able to build their own tools. So more and more people are going to build on their own, small teams. So we should not forget to keep great pricing plans for them as well, to encourage them to keep building and inspire maybe eventually people you that are working in enterprises. So that's another thing I would say here as well.
Fantastic points. And I think both of them are very, very crucial, especially I side with you on the pricing part because I was recently reflecting on that and I was like, oh, it's great. People are focusing on team plans and it's great if you want to build this with your team. Yes. But the fact that at least one complaint that I keep hearing from a lot of these builders is there are way too many tools and I don't actually have the budget to go and purchase these many tools or try to build my own workflows because every tool is like costing a certain $20 and how do I just get started? So I think as much as it's also very empowering to use these tools, it's also putting people into the loop of constantly thinking, okay, which one should I put my bucks on? Like what should I use for this month? And that's also one reason why I feel like there's a lot of churn with AI tools, right? Because people don't stick to a tool in a longer term unless they see value out of it. And it comes back to your point of to see value, they have to go all in, put their reps and start using, and only then can they figure that out. It just feels like a chicken and egg problem where you're not willing to put in the time, but then you also want to see if the platform is good. But yeah, like I think it's one news to the tool makers to think about the pricing, and it's also the onus is back on the user because they're also constantly worried about like where do I go spend this and how much am I spending across tools.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like the creators, the small teams are talking about this, what they are building with others. So eventually it will help lead into enterprise or team plans as well. And yeah, when you were saying that, I was thinking again about this analysis paralysis thing.
Yeah.
Like, even
Yeah.
when people get started, you see all these shiny new tools popping up on socials and in the tech news. But at a certain point, if you're really serious, like, hey, I want to learn this and I want to build
Mm.
my own project, just stick for a while with a few tools. So you learned it, you followed the course, bootcamp, whatever, and just stick for a while with those tools and get the reps in. Instead of chasing new tools and I want to learn this as well, just go for a while with the tools you enjoyed during the course and try to build several projects. So you get better at the foundations, you see better like, oh, this is how we do it, this is how it comes together.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, I totally understand that it's difficult to ignore the buzz, but if you keep chasing everything, you also get distracted, and you
Yeah.
need just the process. You need to focus on getting the reps
Yeah.
in. So yeah,
Yeah.
first get started and then practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, that's the fine line that we want to end the talk with. It's great because what we just discussed in terms of idea to app, and it's literally like a lot of things is back on someone as a user who's just getting started for them to go and experiment and try. And I think it's also a very fine balance between the tool makers and also people who end up being on the other side of trying. So a lot of this is like how you had put through where there's no like one fit all solution to this, but it's like you try this out and then you create your own way that it works through and then keep pushing up for it. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much, Harold. It's been so much fun talking to you on the show. And it's also very actionable. Like I said, for someone who's listening to this episode, I I just feel like how much beneficial it is for them to go back now, reflect on how can they get started with that simplest of ideas, how can they go and do the prototype for that, and how can they actually like chime this out with an AI agentic platform. And you also shared a few good examples of platforms for them to check out. So yeah, all of this is very exciting, and I wish the best for you to train more builders and have more fun in the process of doing that. And yeah, thanks once again for being here.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. Yeah, thanks for having us here. And yeah, indeed, I really enjoy helping people get started with this. So yeah, I enjoy it a lot, and I hope to unlock many new opportunities for the people. with our bootcamps. So yeah, and with the tools as well, the tools mentioned here, and the advice is really aimed at non-technical beginners, founders. This is the time to get started, because yeah, times are exciting. We started with it. It's just it's wild. So yeah, it's yeah, get into it. Yeah, that's my advice.
Just jump
Don't
in, dive in.
overthink. Yeah. Well, yeah, I enjoy talking about this, and enjoy the joy of these new opportunities, the creative side of AI. Yeah, that's it's
Yes.
wild times. It's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
very promising. And yeah, I just hope you, me, and everybody who's listening to the show keep learning and keep putting stuff out and sharing their work and, like co building with each other.
Yeah, yeah. Let me know if you have any questions later. Always open to
Sure,
connect.
sure, sure.
And
I
yeah,
mean, for folks who are listening as well, if you've got like questions that you want to connect to Harold with, he's extremely nice on DMs. You can like just drop your messages to him and to me as well if you want to know anything about AI and building. And I'm like, yeah, let's learn this together.
yeah, definitely. Well, and I can drop a few founders for you, like links with a nice discount as well for the bootcamps. If people want to dive in, you can add this to the link in bio, or
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes, absolutely. I'll put it in the show notes. And for folks who actually would love for a very tutored way of getting started with AI tools, it'd be great to for them to take the course that you're doing and the boot camp and actually get very practical about the skills. And yeah, thank you, Harold.
All right, thanks. Appreciate you. Yeah, cheers.